Um, just want to give you an update or a reminder. Fifth Sunday dinner will be coming up in a couple, 2-3 weeks, something like that. Whatever it is, fifth Sunday. Protocol will be coming up at the end of the month. We're going to do a barbecue theme. So, what I know or what I think, I'll get confirmation at some point, is, are y'all still doing, okay. All right, yeah, got my confirmation. So, we'll have Ron and Stephanie and myself, we're going to get together and have shredded pork. We might have some ribs. We might have pork loins, smoked chicken drums. So we're going to try to put on a pretty good barbecue there. And that'll be for our fifth Sunday. So if y'all want to kind of throw in that stuff to go along with it, that would be great. And I'll send out a message. And if you want on the messages to what we're doing, get with me. I can get you added to that list just to kind of keep everything coordinated and going that way. We'll sing number one, and I don't remember the verses here. Let me get this out. 1, 2, 3, and 5. 1, 2, 3, and 5. Oh yeah, by the way, before you have a heart attack on me up there. April, the what? See, I told you should have done this, and I wouldn't have to do all this. April the 12th will be teen singing hosted here. Felix is asking for help and volunteers to help him pitch in with the food, the snacks. Usually, I don't know, what is there, 40, 50 people easy at the teen singings. From my understanding, from what I got out of him, was pizza is going to be the main theme, and then if you guys want to help him with pizzas, help him get some desserts, sweets, we make sure we get those kids hopped up with sugar. That way when they go back home, moms and dads love it. Ain't that right, little girl? That's right. What you got? I guess. Watch the weather for tonight, I've been told, so keep your eyes on that. If nothing else, we'll sing number one. We'll sing 1, 2, 3, and 5. Huh? Well, then you better sing out, hadn't you?
Brethren, if you'd like to be opening up your Bibles to Hebrews, the 9th chapter. Hebrews, the 9th chapter. Remember last week we looked at Hebrews chapter 8, verse 1 of that, I believe to be the thesis statement of the book. And now the Hebrew writer is really going to get to the points he's wanting to drive home. He's already made the point that Christ is better than the angels, better than Moses, better than Joshua. And now he's talking about he's a better high priest. And now in chapter 9, we're going to talk about the two covenants. Before we get started, got some housekeeping things that I would like to mention. And Tommy, if you're watching, I don't consider you a housekeeping thing, but Tommy Hartman's going to be having a procedure tomorrow, which hopefully will keep him from having to have other procedures, in that he's got some kidney stones. He's going to have to, they're hoping to, do it in such a way that it won't cause him any discomfort. So be praying for him. That's going to happen in the morning. So there is going to be a couple things going on. The Kings on April the 19th. Well, it's out there a bit. But on April the 19th, the Kings are going to be having a housewarming party for Shelby and Carson Bell. And that's they're moving to, you could probably look at it and see the tropical stuff. They're moving to Florida. I said, well, they don't need anything if they're moving to Florida, man. That's great. They can go down there and live on the beach and stuff. But anyway, so they're having a housewarming party. Also, Haley is having they're going to have a little duckling is on the way. And so you're into that evolution. I think it's probably going to be yeah. But that's going to be Saturday, March 28th, so we don't have a lot of time with that. March the 28th, on a Saturday, excuse me, at 10 a.m. Here at the building. Saturday, March 28th, that's going to be a baby shower for Haley and Zach. We're going to be having another one. Is it public? Do we know the name? Genesis? Y'all are so weird with stuff like that. We'll call him Jenny or something. No, what's that? Luke. Oh, how cool. Luke. All right, so Luke's going to be joining us soon, and so they're going to give him a shower. And I'm glad to hear that. That's neat. So I think that's all I have as far as announcements. That we don't do announcements usually on Sunday nights, but those I thought needed to go ahead and get that Haley. That's coming up quick. And then Tommy tomorrow. This is put out by Rose Publishing. Now, that's a denominational publishing house, okay, just to tell you. So when you get into finer points of, say, salvation or stuff like that, got to be a little careful. But when it comes to just like Bible stories, Old Testament stuff, they've got some really great things. This here is one of them flyers that's it's talking about the tabernacle. You'll see one of the pictures. I just love these things. I always have loved them. It just helps me kind of put it in perspective, And so I love these things. And so tonight we're going to be talking about the tabernacle. Even got a picture of the high priest. He's got his little plate on the front there. They had the 12 tribes of Israel. Got the little name of Israel on his lapels. He's carrying his little censer there. Just really neat stuff. But the first one we're going to be looking at up here is the temple. Now, this is Solomon's temple. Solomon's temple will be different, of course, than Zerubbabel, the temple that's built when Israel returns. That temple won't even be around when Jesus comes. Solomon's temple is destroyed. Remember who destroyed it? Who destroyed Solomon's temple? Nebuchadnezzar, okay, the Babylonians, okay? Zerubbabel was going to build a temple, and it's going to be destroyed too. In fact, when they go to rededicate another temple they're going to build, you even see that on your calendars even today, day of dedication. But what temple will be around when Jesus comes? Do you remember what they called that temple? Herod's temple, okay? The interesting thing about Herod's temple and the temple that's built after the return is there's no Ark of the Covenant. It's no longer. And by the time you see Solomon's temple being built, get my clicker out. There's some things missing from the ark. Remember, the ark is about, about 4 feet long. It's about 2.5 feet wide. And inside it were a couple of items. We'll get to that here in a moment. We're only going to look at the first 10 verses tonight of Hebrews chapter 9. However, we are going to bum the last 2 verses. Verses 11 and 12 is that kind of an invitation tonight. But that's the thrust, the old tabernacle. I just think that is so interesting that the Hebrew writer would use the tabernacle instead of Solomon's temple. Because what was Solomon's temple? Oh, it's glorious. It had all this gold and all these neat things around it. The tabernacle, of course, was ancient Israel. They came together. Remember free offerings to put this thing together, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But you see that fire shooting out? It's at night. That's called the Shekinah. That's the presence of God. And during the day, you wouldn't see a fire, but you would see a cloud, okay? And that was with Israel for 40 years in the wilderness. You can see all the little tents around it. The ones that are immediately around it, of course, would belong to the Levites. And then those further out were in different family groups. Solomon's temple is a little bit different, okay? If you look at this, if you see that fire on that side, little fire, little altar there, it's not as big. Look at this bad boy. That thing is huge. Solomon's temple is gigantic. And notice the 12 oxen, or bulls, that are underneath the laver. That laver is bigger than a lot of Hollywood stars' hot tubs. I mean, it's just huge. Whereas the one you had at the tabernacle, not near that big. It was portable. You need to be able to empty it, take it with you to the next place. Solomon's a lot different. They had 2 temple pillars. And so you can tell it's totally different looking than the tabernacle. Very extravagant. There no money was held back on this. Remember, David had saved up for the end of his kingdom the money he would store up so Solomon would have the material and all the supplies that he needed to build it. And you'll notice there, number 9, 10, and 11, that's going to be the cherubim. The ark does go in there, but you'll remember there's a couple of things missing out of it. You had 3 things in the Ark of the Covenant. You remember? Aaron's rod that budded. You had the 10 Commandments. And you had a bowl of Cheerios, right? No, it wasn't Cheerios. It was manna, right? But by the time it makes its way into Solomon's temple, it doesn't have the bowl anymore, and it doesn't have the rod. So all you have is 10 Commandments. By the time you go through Zerubbabel's temple and then to Herod's temple, nothing. There's just like a concrete platform in there. Or marble, whatever it would have been. So no Ark of the Covenant. It had been long since taken, and destroyed or whatever. Herod's temple, that porch they call it a porch. See outside the walls, inside the portico, that is called Solomon's porch. It's 22 acres. So picture, if you will, on the day of Pentecost, the apostles are on this porch and they're preaching. And that helps you understand, at least it helped me a great deal, because initially I thought that tongue speaking was where one guy just said something like, or something, all right? And Judy heard French because she was French, and Johnny heard German because he was German. But see, what I had taken and done was turn tongues into a gift of hearing. And that, you would just hear whatever the guy said, but that's not the way it was. You had men who were actually teaching in different languages they had not studied, but they were doing it at different places on Solomon's porch. Perhaps one guy was, talking in Latin in one corner, and another fellow was maybe in Hebrew in another corner. And then, so you've got the apostles distributed all over this. It's huge. And each one is preaching, and the guy saying, how can we hear these guys in our own language? In other words, the language they study, that's what he was speaking. You go on to the next group, and he might be speaking a different language. And so, remember it was so great, wonderful that some guy came out, well, I just think they're filled with new wine. That's what somebody might, it's kind of silly, right? And Peter says, of course, that's not what's happening. But that's a huge, huge thing. Herod, remember how long they'd been working on it at the time of Christ? Remember Jesus said, you destroy this temple and I'll raise it up in 3 days. And they said, you can't do that. This temple's been being worked on we're going to get together and play Bible trivia. That's just what we're going to do. 46 years. They said 46 years we've worked on this thing. You can see the Church of the Holy Sepulchre up there in the top left. The X marks the spot. That's where they say the tomb of Jesus was. If you went to Jerusalem today, that Catholic Church is still there. But that kind of gives you the idea of where the Western Wall, which is the only thing that's left, and then you see the Temple Mount. It's that kind of brick, oblong structure that you see there. That's where the temple would have sat. But what we're going to be talking about tonight in Hebrews 9 is the tabernacle. Now, the tabernacle was portable. You could take it with you. The walls, actually, they had a thing they would slide boards into that would make the side walls, and it had big rods they would stick through rings on the outside, would hold those stable. And then, of course, they'd tie them down with with animal skins that made it was waterproof. And when we start thinking about tents, a lot of times we can be confused. Now, how was that built? Remember, Israel left out. God said, when you leave, you're going to rob the Egyptians. They didn't go around at gunpoint, right? The Egyptians were so anxious to get rid of the Hebrews, right, that they just said, look, go. And they were giving them stuff, giving them gold and silver and saying, we just want you guys out of here. We've already lost our firstborns. Just please go. So they asked for a free will offering for people to bring various things, including linens that they would need for the different tapestries, the stuff they would need for the priest's clothes, gold and things that they would need. And so, in fact, everybody brought so much that they end up saying, okay, that's enough, no more. We have more now than we can deal with. The ark would have been in the middle. Of course, on one end, the east side, you would have Moses, Aaron, and his sons. The ark, of course, is on the western side. You had the Merari to the north. You have Goshen to the west, and Kohathites. Now, the reason they're so close is there's the ones that actually erect and take down the tabernacle when it was time to move. These were particular Levites, okay, particular family groups that had different responsibilities. You notice I have the ark up there. Merari had its responsibility. The Kohathites and so forth had their responsibilities, and so they would take down. Now, each tribe had to stay with its tribal group camped around this tabernacle. Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Reuben, and Simeon. Now, you might say, Judah's the fourth oldest, but where is Levites? Well, remember, the Levites are all around it. That's the Merari, Gershon, and Kohath, and Aaron, of course. So you have, Simeon. Well, where's Reuben? Well, where is Reuben? I missed Reuben. Where are you, Reuben? Down there on the bottom. I saw it. So there's your four. And they're kind of also stay in family groups with their mothers, if you will. Everybody in yellow, who was their mom? Everybody in yellow. That's Leah, right. Everybody in red, who was their mom? Bible trivia next week, okay? No, that's Rachel, right. And so then you've got the Asher and Gad, who were from one of the handmaids. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's Bilhah, because, no, it's not. That would be Zilpah, because Dan, if I'm not mistaken, you check me on this, was from Rachel's handmaid, which was Bilhah, because Dan, she says, God has judged me, okay? And so Dan is a word for judge, by the way. It's the Hebrew word for judge. And so as they left, you had a certain marching order, and that was it. That was it. They had to leave in that exact thing. Now, if you notice, this is a breakdown of the tabernacle. Verse 1, chapter 9. Then verily, then truly, the first covenant had. Brethren, mark it down in your Bibles if yours is not. Mine is. Notice, it's kind of hard for y'all to see. Chapter 9, verse 1, had. That's a key word. The first covenant had. Not anymore. Also, ordinances of divine service and a worldly sanctuary. Let's break that down a little bit. Divine there. Divine service. I should have came up together. It did not. Latreus. It is the same word that is used, root word, that's used in, notice with me if you will, back in chapter 8, verse 5. Who serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God when he's about to make the tabernacle. See, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern I showed thee in the mount. Notice that second word, who serve. This is talking about what the priests did, okay? So in chapter 9, verse 1, he's still talking about priests, priestly functions. And this is what the first tabernacle was for the priest to do their jobs. And notice they had past tense, worldly. This is in contrast to heavenly, and not a bad thing. The only other time you see this, it's the word cosmos with ikos stuck on the back of it. It's the noun, cosmos, meaning the world, and this verb at the end of it. And they combine this word, and it's used in, I think it's Titus chapter 2, verse 12. And it's used there in a bad sense, but here it's not talking in a bad sense. And some of the translators, I think, felt the pressure of that, so they decided to change that a little bit. The sanctuary, of course, just simply means a holy place. Y'all have many denominational friends? They ever talk to you about when they go into sanctuary? You know, brethren, is this a sanctuary? Well, I guess right at this moment it would be, I suppose, if you want to get technical, because wherever the saints are gathered, that's the church, right? So I guess but is this, when we all leave, is this a sanctuary? No. You know, the first time I ever heard the word sanctuary, y'all remember it might still be there, the bird sanctuary? I remember asking my mama, why do they call it a sanctuary? Well, that's where the birds live. Okay. Well, I mean, they live at home. We got some of the trees. And why do they call it a sanctuary? Well, you're not allowed to shoot them or whatever, you know, in the sanctuary. You know, they're protected. And so, anyway, food, I don't know why I even said that. Worldly, notice what happens with some of the newer translations, wanting to get away from the idea that it's a bad thing, that it's a worldly thing. They did things there they shouldn't. Notice, they change it. The ASV says, a sanctuary of this world. So there you see, you got the heavenly, but here we just have the world. And then in the New American Standard Bible, I think this is better, earthly sanctuary, because he's going to do a contrast between the two. He's comparing the tabernacle on earth to the heavenly tabernacle, not made with hands. Notice verse 2. For there was a tabernacle made, the first, wherein was the candlestick. Now we're going to break down and talk about the furniture that was actually in the tabernacle. Now this furniture will also be found in Solomon's temple, and but it has changed. It's going to be a little bit different, and a lot of people weren't real happy with that, especially your very conservative teachers, your rabbis, and so forth. They wanted, they just thought it was a little extravagant. But anyway, wherein was the candlestick, the table, and the showbread. That's interesting. That word showbread literally means the bread of face. You know, you're thinking, what kind of bread is that? Well, the idea there, when God speaks to a man face to face or in the face, had your attention. And so this bread was to be presented, it was to be put out, and so it'd be like in your face. You could see that. And so there's some debate on exactly what that means, but I think that's the easiest thing. And notice this, which is called the sanctuary, tabernacle. When we think of the tabernacle, we think of somebody living in tents and Bedouins. We have this idea that it's like a Coleman tent, right? You know, like, well, listen here, sleep six. If you open that zipper back there, not with these guys. I remember years ago, I got a National Geographic as a kid, and there was a big, huge tent, looked like one like you have a circus in, right? But it was the Bedouins. That was what it was talking about. And there were 3 Mercedes-Benz sedans parked in front of this bad boy. So to give you an idea, these ain't poor people, okay? So these tents could be very, very extravagant. So before we start making judgments about the tabernacle, oh, we had to run around this little old portable, they can be very, very, here is some Arabs inside of his, and you notice there's a hookah pipe there in the floor there, that blue thing. But anyway, you don't want to know what they smoke in that thing. I don't even think Don would go for that pipe right there, but anyway. Here's the tabernacle. It had animal skin that covered it. It's a large structure. And so a lot of stuff was in there, right? And so you break it down, you have two places inside. You have the holy place, and then you have the Holy of Holies. Inside the holy place, well, we're going to start with, as you come in the eastern place there, you have the sacrifice. And remember, these are all typology. God has given us a picture in the tabernacle, one that I'm so appreciative for. And you stay with that picture through the temple so that you can see. You have to have the sacrifice. That's what you come in with. And before the priests could go into the holy place, they had to wash. And they didn't have a little thing of soap there and you just washed your hands. This was a ceremonial washing that they did before they could go into the holy place. Inside the holy place, which is typology, which is the type of the church, you had the table of the showbread. And what is that? Well, it kind of looks something like that right there, except I was saying covered in gold, right, with handles so we can carry it around. You had the altar of incense, and you had the menorah, the golden candlestick, each one of these representing a different facet of the church. Inside the Holy of Holies, you had the Ark of the Covenant. We've already talked about that. The menorah, now there's debate on exactly how big, there's debate on how big a cubit was, all right? And it starts with 18 inches. You know, it's generally about from the end of your finger to your elbow. And it's usually about 18 inches, but it can go up to 2 feet. So this thing was either a little over 4 feet tall or a little under 6 feet tall. So a pretty good sized candlestick. And 7 branches, they had oil in it. And that oil, it had to burn all the time. It's the only light you had inside the tabernacle. Of course, this guy's dressed up like a Levite would have been in a linen garb. And then you had the table of showbread. I don't think that's an accurate representation, but who am I? I believe they were square cakes that were 6 on each side, representing the 12 tribes, and on top of it was some frankincense. Now, I've often wondered, did you have to put that, was it like jelly for the toast? I don't know. But I know frankincense is an odorous, it has an aroma. People burn it. It's like an incense. And so whether that was just to make it smell pleasant in there, I don't know. But that was, the priest would eat that. There were exceptions to the rule of that. Anybody know of one? The one that'll jump out at you. Remember David and his men? Yeah, that's right. David and his men, they were hungry. There wasn't nothing there. He said, all we have is this, the bread, the showbread. And David said, basically, we'll take it. And what did the Lord say about that? Do you remember? He said, don't you remember how that David, when he was hungry, ate of the showbread? It was a situation, life and death. And so the men ate of that, but that was supposed to be reserved for the priests. Then you had the altar of incense. You remember you had a couple of guys that were killed grabbing a hold of that altar. And they were run through with a sword because they were, trying to run from being punished. You have the fire pans. Those basically is what the priest would take the coals in. Notice verse 3. And after the second veil. Now the first veil would have been when you came in. The second veil would be the holiest of all. That's where the Ark of the Covenant would have been. It's thought to typify the barrier between God and sinful man. I believe that's right. The only person that could go behind there, enter that veil, was the high priest. And do you know that he couldn't go in there without what? Blood. He couldn't go in without blood because he had to offer it for himself. And he only went in one time a year. And he also had some noisemakers on him. Do you remember that? He had bells, and they were sewed to his garment. And so he's the only fellow that could go back in there. Separate, that veil was very ornate. Remember there were ladies had tapestry, had made cherubims that were facing each other. So it's a very beautiful thing that separated the holy place from the rest of it. Somebody did a good job doing all that, a lot better than I could have done, but it had those pictures of those angels sewn into it. You see that fellow standing back there in the blue? That's the garb of the high priest. Has looked different. Now, that was a direct descendant of Aaron. And priests, all the priests were. But you couldn't be in there if you were not a direct descendant of Aaron. And do you remember what happens when Jesus is crucified? What happens to that veil? It is torn completely in two, signifying that now everybody has access. Not just one tribe, not just the Levites, not just men. Now everyone, all of us who obey the gospel are priests of the Most High God, and we have access to the very throne of God, not just inside the Holy of Holies. I always thought that picture was cool. I don't know why I always like to use it. But that light there represents the what? Presence of God. That's where he would commune with, talk to the children of Israel. And, of course, the cherubims are on top, and their wings touch. And remember, that is called the mercy seat. That always confused me. I never could figure out why they call it a seat, because it's actually a what? It's a lid. Yeah, why don't they call it the mercy lid? But you know what? I'm not going to argue with God, right? Mercy seat it is. And so, notice which had the golden censer and the Ark of the Covenant overlaid round about with gold. Remember, the box itself was made of acacia wood, I believe it was, and it's covered with gold. Wherein was the golden pot that had the manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the tables of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. The golden censer. The word used here by the Hebrew author is never used in the Septuagint to refer to the incense altar. And so there's been a lot of question as to where that altar, was it in front of the curtain or was it behind? And so won't get into a whole lot of that, but I thought that was interesting. This incense on the day, maybe it was taken in on this particular day. On the one day in the year when the Holy of Holies was entered, the incense altar played a significant part. Not only was the Holy of Holies never entered without incense from the incense altar, but the blood of the sin offering on the Day of Atonement. That comes from F.F. Bruce in his commentary on the book of Hebrews. So there's the place where you're supposed to get the fire. Remember, a couple of fellas thought that they didn't really need to get it from there. Remember what happened to them? They were struck dead, right? Remember their names? Nadab and Abihu. They live with us in infamy, don't they? Oh, what promise, and yet young lives taken. Here's the garb of the high priest. Notice what he has in his hand. It's a thing that burns incense. If you've ever been to a Catholic service, funeral, whatever, you'll see, what's that? Hey, there you go, right. They use those even today in Catholic services. And there right there is a Greek Orthodox. You can see the little Byzantine picture behind there. Here, of course, you have the 10 Commandments, the rod that, and we got that from Korah's rebellion, remember? Korah says, you guys think you're the only ones that can do this. We can do it too. And boy, stand back, you know. God opens up the earth and destroys all those 250 princes. You had the golden bowl of manna. And notice verse 5, and over it the cherubims of glory shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly. The mercy seat. Let's talk about that for a moment. Hebrews 9:5, over it in the cherubims of glory showing the mercy seat. That comes from a Greek word, hilasterion. Something I think's neat. You may not, it may not make you, but I just love word things. And 1 John 2:2. And he is the propitiation. That word that's hard to say and nobody knows what it means. That comes from that same word. So what's that talking about? Remember what did the mercy seat do? Inside there you've got the 10 Commandments, right? God's presence. And God's presence is separated from the law by that mercy seat. And once a year the priest would go in there and sprinkle blood to appease God. See, that was keeping God from looking at that law and carrying it out, if you will. All those people breaking those commandments off with their heads, no. And so Jesus is our propitiation now. He serves as that covering between the law and between God. Does that mean we don't keep the law? That we just do whatever we want to do? Absolutely not. People run with that. But that is not what that's talking about. Jesus is our propitiation. He is our advocate. What's he say in verse 1? My little children, these things I write unto you, that we sin not. But if any man sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ the righteous. And he is the propitiation for our sins. He's that covering, if you will, that separates God's justice from and his mercy. Chapter 4, verse 10, same thing again. Herein is love, that we love God, but that he loved us, and he sent his Son to be the mercy seat, the covering, the propitiation, the relief for our sins. And I always thought that was a pretty neat picture. Here again is another photo of that. If you ever went to Greens Lake Road, they used to have one out in the hallway about that size right there. I always thought that was pretty neat. They had done a whole tabernacle thing years ago, and there's one traveling around the Brotherhood now, just totally well done. I know the Jacksonville congregation had it, and they passed it on to another congregation. And if we ever do that, I may try to, for Vacation Bible School or something, try to run that down, because it's pretty spectacular to look at. Most people don't even know what the tabernacle looked like. Verse 6, now when these things were thus ordained, the priest went always into the first tabernacle, accomplishing the service of God every day. That's what they did. That was their job. The high priest does the same thing. But into the second went the high priest alone once every year. As a matter of fact, the other priests weren't even allowed into the holy place when it was his time to go into the Holy of Holies. You know, you think about that for just a second. Dakota, I don't know how excited I would have been about going in there. I mean, you're trying to do what's right, but in the back of your mind, you know what happened to Nadab and Abihu, right? And so you got your bells on, you got your blood, but that still has to be, it's a terrible thing, a terrifying thing to be into the hands of a living God. And so to go in there, even the other priests couldn't be in there with you as you're going into the holy place. Boy, I tell you what, when we do self-reflection, I think that's something to think about, to be in the very presence of God. This priest, the high priest, when he went in there once a year, he had to take blood, which he offered for himself. And that's the argument that we get to a little bit later where, you know, the Hebrew writer is going to say, Jesus doesn't do that. He took his blood as an offering to God, but one time. And that wasn't for himself, was it? Did Jesus need his sins forgiven? No, that blood that he took to God was an appeasement for mine and your sins. Not without blood, which he offered for himself and for the errors of the people. So he'd go in there. Remember, he had to sprinkle the blood in a certain way. Just really, what a situation. The Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit, this signifying, in other words, this is a sign that the way into the holiest of all was not yet made manifest. In other words, you couldn't get there yet, right? While as the first tabernacle was yet standing. There had to be something that take place so that we could get back in there, that we could get to the throne of God, if you will. I like how the New American Standard puts this. The Holy Spirit is signifying this, that the way into the holy place has not yet been disclosed while the outer tabernacle is still standing. What's that mean? The old law had to be done away with. Jesus says the old law was what? Fulfilled, and then he could bring forth the new covenant, which he died for, and then that New Testament wouldn't be of effect until this same chapter, for a testament is a force after men are dead, and is of no power at all while the testator liveth. So this was something that had to be done, which was a figure. This word figure is not your typical word for figure. Usually when we talk about figure, it's the word tupos. It means a pattern, but not here. It says, which was a figure for the time then present, in which were offered both gifts and sacrifices that could not make to him that did the service perfect. Isn't that amazing? He won't tell us till chapter 10. We've still got to go through a lot before we get there. But the blood of bulls and goats couldn't do what? Couldn't take away sin. What were they doing? Each year, that high priest would go in there to offer sacrifice in remembrance. So, that did the service perfect as pertaining to the conscience. You knew you'd still done wrong, and you knew that poor little old lamb that you just slaughtered just really wasn't enough to do that. God has said, you do that, I'm going to take care of it. And what we've got going on here is a type of. The figure there, I think it's neat. That's our word, parable. When we talk about parables, when you take one thing and lay it down beside another, here you're taking, an earthly truth with a heavenly meaning. And so, I may have that backwards. Parable, which is a symbolic for the present age. It's symbolic for the present age. It's a figure, not the real thing. We've got the what? We're like Coca-Cola. We got the real thing. Outstanding. And so there's another thing here. We're not going to take time to read all this. You ever heard of the scapegoat? It's an interesting thing. Happens on the same day, Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement. 2 goats, and they draw lots. You want to be the lucky goat. But one goat, the lot goes to him, and he is slain. And his blood is taken. That's the blood that the priest uses to go inside. The other goat is covered with a little jacket thing that he wears, and he's taken out into the wilderness. He is called the scapegoat. This is a book by William, I think it's Barclay. And boy, it's very great, but it's very long. So don't want to take you through all of that. You got 2 goats. They're standing outside. They take lots. One's called for Jehovah. The other is for Azazel, the scapegoat. Lots are drawn and laid on the head of each goat. A tongue-shaped piece of scarlet is tied to the horn of the scapegoat. Then the priest turns to the bullock, cuts its throat, and the blood is caught in a basin. The basin was kept in motion so that the blood would not coagulate, for it was soon to be used. The high priest then took coals from the altar, put them in a censer, took the censer, put it in a special dish. Then he walked into the Holy of Holies to burn incense in the very presence of God. And he comes out, he takes the bullock's blood and went to the Holy of Holies, sprinkled it 7 times up, 7 times down. He came out, killed the goat that was marked for Jehovah. With this blood, re-entered the Holy of Holies and sprinkled it again. Then he came out, mingled the bloods together, and put it on the horns of the scapegoat. Then came the most vivid ceremony. The scapegoat was brought forward. The high priest laid his hands on it, confessed his own sins of the people, and the goat was led forth into the desert, into a land not inhabited, is the idea of a desert, laden with the sins of the people, and there it was killed. And so very interesting what takes place there when ends this section talking about the tabernacle. Says, which stood only in meats and drinks, and divers washings, and carnal ordinances, imposed on them until the time of Reformation. What's that mean? They were rituals. And these rituals were there to paint a picture, to show something that was going to happen in the future. If you go to a Lutheran Mass, or whatever they call it, or you go to a Catholic Mass, you're still going to see a lot of what? Ritual. You're going to see a lot of ceremony. As a matter of fact, if you want to see a ritual or ceremony carried to the nth degree, I encourage you, watch Christmas services from the Pristine Chapel, whatever they call it, Sistine Chapel. You talk about the biggest dog and pony show you'll ever see. Pope's got on whatever that thing is he wears, man, that looks like 12 people got to carry it behind him. And he goes, sits on the throne. It's ridiculous. It's what that is. And so that's buku ceremony and everything. What we have, brethren, is a covenant based on spirituality. It's not based on big, huge cathedrals that you walk into and you're supposed to feel the very presence of God. It's not built on how we feel. You know, when you go in there, you want to get this spirit of awe. Where does that spirit of awe come from? It comes from your mind. When we approach the living God today in prayer, we need to be able to put that on ourselves without having some building, bring that to our mind. You see, Catholics, a lot of people keep a lot of fleshly ritual. I told you about the funeral I went to at the Lutheran church where a dude wore his knee out going by that altar, kissing it every time he went by. That's part of the ritual. I thought, boy, I sure hope somebody cleaned that thing, before he got to it. Until the time of Reformation. Notice this word, Reformation. Diorthosis, dia, through, ortho, to make straight. You ever been to an orthopedic? What's he trying to do? Make your bones straight again. That's where you get that from. Till the time of making straight. In the physical sense of making straight, restoring to its natural, normal condition. So the time of Reformation, when we can become in the presence of God, we can be cleaned up. Definite statement of the temporary nature of the Levitical system. It was just for a time. Blood of bulls and goats was doing nothing but painting us a picture of the blood sacrifice that would be required one day, and that with Jesus Christ. Now notice the next 2 verses, and this is yours. But Christ, we're switching gears now. We're going from the tabernacle. We're going to go to what's taking place, the service. But Christ being come an high priest of good things to come by a greater and more perfect tabernacle. That tabernacle was pretty cool, right? There's a lot of stuff that went into that. That was neat. And then to take that and move that to Solomon's temple and the structure and how it was like one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world and how people would travel all over the world to see that, There's a more greater and more perfect tabernacle. Where's that? Not made with hands. Not of this building. You see, that was just a picture. Remember what he said about a shadow? There's just a shadow of the things to come. Neither by the blood of bulls, goats, and calves, but by his own blood he entered into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for me and you. That's pretty spectacular. That priest goes in there every year. As a matter of fact, if they had a place today, he'd be going in there now, but they don't. God took that away from them, tried to eradicate it all, but they keep bringing it back, right? God destroys the temple, The entire Jewish system through the Romans did it twice, by the way, once in 70 and then again in, I think, like 130. And no, that was fleshly. That's one of the arguments for instrumental music. People say, why don't we use instruments? Well, we do use instruments. But the instruments we use are those that are authorized by God, and that's our minds, and that's our voices. Spiritual. It's not physical. It's not real blood that we're offering, but it's we drink of that cup. It's a representation of the blood of Christ. When we eat that bread, it's representative of his body, real blood. And brethren, that's as real as it gets. And when we do that, we are taking of the same elements that the Apostle Peter, James, John, all those fellows, we're doing exactly what they did in the first century. And it's just a beautiful thing, and it's an internal thing. That's where it takes place. That's where the love takes place. That's where the change has to take place. Do you remember how effective all this stuff was with Israel? Remember how effective? Not very. Remember, they were all time building other temples, making other gods. They were just never faithful to the God of heaven like they needed to be. And that's a real shame. What about us? This is a spiritual thing. This is about what's in your head. Are you dedicated to the Christ? Do you know what Jesus expects of you? Do you want to go to heaven? Do you want to be with that? Do you want to have eternity with God? Some people, that's just, I don't want to do that. That can't be much fun. And you know, I know people that think like that. What did that Billy Joel saying? I'd rather go to hell with the saints because sinners or something, because sinners are much more fun. I can't remember the lyric. What's that? Laugh with the sinners than pray with the saints because the sinners are much more fun. Right up till you fall over dead. And you wake up in torments and you're going, this is not much fun. And you know, that's the alternative. In Jesus, the Son of God, the greatest lover of man that's ever been, tried to tell us that. Because he died so that we don't have to go there, because that place is not for you, and it's miserable, and it's so miserable that he says, I'll go through this once so they don't have to do that at all. Don't go there. Change your mind. Be what God would have you to be. If we can help you in any way, we encourage you to come. As together we stand and while we sing. As I am with
Please keep in mind, 5th Sunday, barbecue night. Keep in mind that Felix needs help with the teen singing, so get with him and pitch in to help him there. What else was there? I know it's a little bit off, but I think we were given some choices for the Friday night singing, and that will take place as of this moment, May 15th. In previous years, we have hit that thing right with school graduations, and so we're trying to avoid that. And if everything holds as to the schedule the dates we were given, we did choose May the 15th on that. So that's, of course, that's a ways out, but do want to make mention of that. We'll sing 572, and then Bill will have our dismissal prayer. We have heard the Macedonian call today, send the light, send the light, and the golden offering at the cross we lay, send the light, send the light, send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine from shore to shore. Send the light, the blessed gospel light, let it shine